Hey, so I wanted to tell a story about how I discovered that I lived in a narcissistic family, and also that the man I was dating at the time was a narcissist. Because all the narcissists I've been around are covert narcissists, meaning that they hide the fact that they're a narcissist from others, and they pretend that they're really great, wonderful people, really helpful and kind, and it's all just an image to feed people, to perform an act. They're really great actors, actresses. So it has to kind of do with this little spider effect I got going. It's just perfect for this video, and I'll tell you in a minute why it has to do with that. But so I was watching a YouTuber, was watching this Christian YouTube guy. He had all different kinds of topics, but I just was really interested in learning because I just became a believer. Well, I was about, I don't know, like 4 years into being a believer. But, so I was watching different YouTubers. I watch this guy all the time, but he started talking about narcissism and how we should be aware. And, I just liked hearing his, things he had to talk about. So I just tuned in and was kind of listening to what he had to say. And he started talking about just different qualities about a narcissist, and I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, it kind of sounds like some people I know, but I don't know any narcissists. So he was like talking about how you don't always know, because the covert thing. And I was like, oh, that's weird. And so leading up to this, a couple nights before, I think it was like the night before, or 1 or 2 nights before, but it was very fresh in my mind. I just had this really horrifying dream of being in this nice loft with my ex, and it was like our house or something, and he got angry at something silly and started chasing me around the house like a monster almost. He was just I got scared because he was super angry. He was following me up this elevator and all these. I kept running for him for some reason. I was just terrified. And I didn't even really know why. It was just he was scary. And then the last part of the dream, he turned into a spider, and it was like a black widow, and it grew bigger and bigger until it was humongous and a giant spider, 10 times bigger than me. And so it was horrifying. I woke up and I was like, what the heck? My ex was this. At the time we were dating, he wasn't my ex, so I was like, okay, that's disturbing, and I knew he had somewhat toxic qualities, but of course I just ignored it and thought it was normal, fighting and back and forth, where it'd make me so mad. I'd be like, I'm not talking to you anymore, and then so many days, months, or whatever that I decided to stop talking, then I'd always come back, and he'd always be so sorry, of course, and so that went round and round for a while, and so I had this dream he was a spider. So back to the YouTuber I was watching, he was talking about narcissists, and he explained how I was just thinking this sounds a lot like my boyfriend. And then he said They're kind of like a black widow spider that just like poisons you and sucks like life out of you. They're like creepy, crawly, sneaky, and how they like wrap their prey in a web so they're like slowly getting stuck, it's like a little trap. And it just hit me, this dream, and I was like, I knew God was like telling me something, and like I knew definitely in that moment that this was my boyfriend. And so of course just learning that, and like I loved him, so I thought, so I just like, instead of like heeding it and trying to get away, I was bonded unhealthily, so I just like clung to him, and I tried explaining to him how he was a narcissist, and of course he's like, that's ridiculous. Like, I think you're a narcissist. Of course, because how they like project all their feelings onto you, or their characteristics onto you, and they'll try to get you to think you're crazy, or you're just like thinking weird thoughts or something. It's absolutely not reality. It's kind of, part of their gaslighting and projecting themselves onto you. So I just, yeah, that was really hard for me finding that out, because I did not want to let him go. So it was like back and forth still, like trying to explain. But then I also had things going on at home with my family. My dad mainly would follow me around and kind of like try to provoke me, and just like constantly be starting fights that I was just like, I don't know what I did wrong, or like what's happening, what's going on, like kind of caught me off guard. And of course, I kind of felt like maybe he has a point, or I did something, or like it would just be like little things like, oh, I could hear your music, but it like totally get blown out of proportion, like, just like open my door and come in aggressively, like, what's going on? Just start a big old fight, instead of just like being normal and being like, hey, could you please turn your music down? Or just like, just random things. And I don't know, just little things would always turn into a big old argument, and it was like he just like enjoyed finding arguments, and I didn't realize that. And as I'm listening, so I like start listening to narcissism videos, because my boyfriend's one, right? So I'm just like, okay, this is weird. He's definitely a narcissist. So I just keep like, I'm like, no, I need to get away, but I'm just like really attached to him, of course, and I'm sure a lot of you know how that feels. But then, like, I'm starting to figure out through all these videos that my dad is one too, and that was just like devastating. Like, my world shook, because I always thought my dad was just like cool, good dad, and like he loved me so much. And come to find out, like, no, has no empathy. He's very selfish. He enjoys picking arguments. Um, Everything's like a show that he's putting on to like look like a great dad and stuff. And like anytime he helps, it's to like have some kind of like record of helping, so that he could say, and most of the time it was like too busy drinking or this or that. And my dad was very very deep alcoholic, lost his job, and like drank all night long. And so that was hard, be having a narcissist mixed with a drunk, because he's just like, and my family tried to say it's just the alcohol that's making him do that. And I'm like, okay, well, like, my grandma got drunk all the time, or was like highly intoxicated with wine all the time. And she never treated me like that ever. Like, she was so kind and sensitive and generous. And so I'm just like, something's not adding up. It's not the alcohol. Like, alcohol is not great. Like, it makes you, like, incoherent and things like that, but doesn't always make people's personality, like, super aggressive. I mean, sometimes, but, it was, like, all the time. So, yeah, I started just figuring this out, and it just got more and more harsh. And I really feel like when I came to Christ, and if you're a believer, you know this, like, you get light in you, you have a spirit in you now that's like, it's different from the world. So people with a heavy spirit of pride, that's from the evil one, Satan, and that spirit does not like the light. So definitely was like, 5 years into my walk with Christ, I was starting to like learn things and learn spiritual warfare, because I came out of the occult. My testimony is on here from coming out of the occult. But yeah, I knew a lot about how the devil operates and how evil operates. And so you could really see that in a narcissist once you realize they're a narcissist and they have that spirit and that pride because they think they are God. It was just crazy how it intensified the arguing and put downs and just trying to attack me all the time. Because I think before I was more, when I would just go with whatever and was in that darkness and didn't have that light of Christ, I would just go with whatever, like, oh, this is normal, to get talked shit to all the time and put down, and or like didn't seem as much. And so because I was just like going with it, and that's what the narcissist does, is they have people around them that tolerate what they do, they approve of what they do, or they like sweep it under the rug and they don't talk about it. And people that expose things like that are not right, that shouldn't be tolerated, those people become a target and an enemy because they will expose their evil deeds. And that's what happened with me, is I started seeing like, it's not okay, and especially being a mother, like, it's not okay to follow my kid around and call her evil, say rude things, to my 8-year-old at the time. She was 8. She's now 18, almost 19. But, yeah, my dad would follow around my child and, like, call her names and stuff, and because she did something, like, that my dad didn't like or whatever, and I was just like, I wasn't okay with that. I was fine with him doing that to me, you know, as his daughter. I was like, you know, that's normal. But once I was a parent and I saw that happening to my child, I was like, absolutely not. Like, you're not. So, you know, that's how a lot of arguments started. I would get in between him and my daughter and be like, yeah, you're not calling my daughter abusive names, saying she's the devil and that she's evil when, you know, he's projecting onto her what he is. So he's trying to get her to take on that, like, oh, I'm horrible, I'm evil. And so as I watched this, I started realizing why I was so fucked up and why I had a low self-esteem and why I chose other guys that did the same kind of crap to me all the time. So, yeah, that pretty much sums up how I started finding all that out. It was pretty crazy. My world shook. Um, and it went on until I completely separated from my family. God definitely did not want me around that darkness. He was setting me apart and setting me to my own destiny, which now I'm still stepping forward in, and it's awesome that I'm away from these people and this ex, but I'll tell you, it wasn't easy. It was like years that I was like in denial with my ex, and I would just like, he had to move away, and you know, I kept exposing him and what he was doing, and you know, he eventually was like, I can't win with you, and moved. And then, so I contacted him, you know, after moving, after so many months, you know, I wouldn't talk to him because we were arguing, and then I found out he just moved to another state, and I called and tried to get a hold of him, and he wouldn't answer for a little while, and I kept calling, and he was finally like, hello, what, like, making me feel horrible. And he's like, I don't like talking to you. You know, I don't want to talk to you. I was like, just felt horrible. And I was like, well, I need to talk to you now that he was gone, you know. And I was absolutely heartbroken. He just stopped answering after a while, wouldn't answer my calls because I was just like going through all this stuff at home, and actually everything was happening in my life at the time. I think God was just completely like shifting everything in my life, and it was like devastating. I lost my job. I got in a car wreck. I didn't drive again for 5 years. After that, I just left my car and had no support because I didn't have any family. My mom at the time had dementia and was disabled, so she was the kindest person in my family, and she couldn't really help because she didn't have her mind anymore, which I think is a side effect of dealing with narcissistic abuse, which I'll go, you know, I've gone into in another video, and I will in more, but, and my grandma just passed, and, you know, I lived with my grandparents, my mom's parents, and my dad and my brother, my mom. So I slowly started losing everything, and my dad just got like really mean and kept following me around, like I said, starting arguments. So then there was like, so my grandpa found a girlfriend right after my grandma died, which my grandma had cancer, and I was hoping to take care of my grandma, and I would watch as, like, pretty much I was the only one who cared and, like, was sad. My grandma was, like, deteriorating. I'm sure other people were sort of in their own way. I don't know, but they definitely didn't show it. It was, like, kind of sick and sad to me. Because I realized if I would have stayed in that family, that's what I would have ended up like. Nobody caring about me as I got older and just, like, leaving me in a room with cancer. Like, oh my gosh. So, yeah, I would make her meals. I would give her medicine through a tube. She had a part in her throat and stuff, like her cancer. She smoked a lot, and so her cancer was through her mouth and down through her throat, so they had to remove, like, her lymph nodes and different things. She couldn't talk right for a long time. Like, poor thing, like, she didn't want to go back to work after that or see anyone, really. She was, like, very reclusive, like, and it was really sad because my grandma was dressed really fancy and beautiful, and she worked at Saks Fifth Avenue in downtown Portland. She was just, like, she's an awesome woman. She's beautiful in so many ways. Giving and generous and kind, and always listened to me. Always listened to me talk. She just sat and listened to me talk and, shook her head, and I don't know, needed her in my life, and she passed, and my grandpa got a girlfriend right away, and he just left the house and, like, went and lived with her because my dad was, like, such an alcoholic and so disturbing, and we were always arguing, like, really bad. I'd go to my grandpa and I'd be like, "Grandpa, my dad, like, won't leave me alone," and my grandpa would be like, "Okay, I don't know, He's a narcissist too, and he was also, I found out, I go into this in another video about sexual abuse. He was sexually abusive to probably more family members than I know, because he's his age, and, he lived there for a long time, and it was the only stable place to go because his dad left him that house, and, my parents lived there. They didn't have money, so my parents had to live there. And then same with me, I lived there. My grandma said I'd always have a place to live there. Come to find out later on, fast forward in this part of the story, that my grandpa ended up selling the house, and I went homeless. And I'll go into more of that another time, but yeah, so my grandma passing was really hard already, and so my grandpa moved out. His wife died that he was with a long time. They were never affectionate to each other. They slept in different rooms. They mostly argued. That's the narcissistic spirit my grandpa had. Perversion. So they never really, like, had a good relationship at all. It was just like they were married to keep their money and whatever intact, the family. So that's just, like, sums up to a narcissistic family. It's all image and just like materials and things, and like my grandma was really sensitive and kind, but she was like not with a good person. She tolerated bad things, which is not good. So, and I talked to my grandma about my grandpa being a pedophile, and she's kind of like stared into space. She didn't even know what to say. This was her husband for many years, and she was just like, I don't think he could ever do that, okay? I don't think. But she was in denial. She kind of just like, it's just like, why did my grandma just like drink wine and smoke cigarettes all day, all the time? And like, she went to work, but like, her days off, it was all just wine and cigarettes. And same with, when she get off work. So, I don't know. I just saw this like depression in her. She loved horror films and crime things, about finding the killer and finding these sick people. And I really just see this like, she was kind of like trapped inside herself. Like she didn't realize what was going on around her, and that she was living with these weird, crazy people that she was watching on TV. She just had no idea because they hid it. And, covert narcissists hide everything. They'll take things to the grave because they don't have empathy for others. It's all about them and their God. They are God of this world to them, and everyone else must submit to their ideas and who they are. And so, anyways, yeah, my dad and I and my brother and my mom were the ones left, and my daughter. My daughter was with friends a lot. I mean, you could see why. Like, really get the heck away from there. But, yeah, and my dad would even, like, be rude in front of her friends and, like, try to sick our dog on her friends and stuff, and be like, when he got childishly, like, upset about something the kids would do, being kids, he'd be like, get him, and they were terrified of the dog. He was a huge German Shepherd, and so it was like, that's evil in itself, like, to even pretend or, like, laugh about that. Like, you're gonna put a dog on these kids that are, like, terrified of this big dog. But anyway, so it was just us, and so my dad started becoming, like, running around like a tyrant, and no one was there. My grandpa wasn't there anymore. He left. He couldn't handle it anymore. He's like, I'm not dealing with this. I'm moving with my girlfriend, and she had a big house and another out in the country. So he just went off into some quiet peacefulness and left me and my daughter there. And, my brother's a little bit younger than me, and my brother just tolerates whatever, too. My dad was, like, taking his money, and my dad constantly puts him down, but he probably was like me, didn't really notice it, thinks, well, it's my dad. My brother's a good guy. He's really helpful and kind and, passive like my mom was. I started becoming the one that was confronting, so it's like, why are you saying this? This isn't okay. And it's like, that is a threat. That's like putting, like, no. And so it felt like a hand going over his mouth, or something, and he was not okay with me. So my brother just, my dad projected this image that I was like bipolar, like my mom, and pretty sure my mom was bipolar because of dealing with all this, like, up and down and back and forth, and, one day they're nice, one day they're not. But, so, where was I? So, yeah, my brother would just tolerate that, and, he saw me as, like, the bad guy confronting my dad, because how dare you, like, disrespect dad, and, there must be something wrong with you, and you're aggressive because you're going against dad, but really, like, dad's the aggressive one, and he is provoking all these things. I'm just defending myself, standing up for myself, and nobody did that in my family, so they're not used to seeing that. They're like, what the hell is this? So yeah, my dad did not like that, and so he's like running all around the house like Pharaoh the Tyrant. That's what I called him, Pharaoh the Tyrant. He even drank pyramid beer with the pyramid, the pharaohs. And he always had those, he had to get stronger and stronger beers, after drinking Keystone Light all the time. And so he was just ruthless and, like, coming after me every day, just like coming up to my room and just, I cooked dinner for my daughter, for, like, the whole family, I'm in there cooking, like, wholesome meals for everyone to eat. My daughter, I let them eat, even though they treated me like shit all the time, and, my dad's like, I clean the house, like, so great, and he comes in and, like, the dining room table's spotless, and he plops this, like, animal skull he found outside in our shed that's, like, all kinds of old ass stuff from, like, years and years ago that it was, like, never cleaned out, and he, like, was out there, like, going through this dark, nasty shed, also with spiders everywhere. I was always like, ew, I don't want to go in there. And then my grandpa turned it into, like, a little workshop area, and he had, like, posters of half-naked girls everywhere, which is, like, totally normal when you're freaking married and you're 60, or not 60, like 70, 80. It's, like, gross. But growing up, I thought a lot of that was, like, guys do that, but it's, like, no, that's disgusting. You're married, you should have pictures of your wife places, not, half-naked women that are literally everywhere, in your home office, in outside shed, out in the garage, like, anywhere you make a display of freaking half-naked women, it's just like, ew. Thanks a lot. So, yeah, so my dad's out there in the shed. He brings in this animal skull and sets it on this table I just washed, like, spick and span. And I'm, like, staring at it, and I'm like, oh my... And he's like, oh, what, you don't like it? You don't like it? What does it remind you of, the devil or something? I'm like, because he knows I'm a Christian. Just like, what the fuck? Like, how evil are you to just, like, he knows exactly what he's doing. And there's several accounts like this I can go over, just, like, trying to sleep, going to my friend's college graduation the next morning, and my dad's in the living room at 5 a.m. right by my bedroom where I sleep, and he's playing electric guitar so loud that it wakes me up. And then I go out and I tell him, like, what's going on? Like, why are you playing music right now at 5 a.m.? Like, oh, you don't like good music? I'm like, just like always trying to provoke a fight. Or always like, it's my fault for being mad. You're playing super loud music when I have to get up early at 5 a.m. Like, that's normal. But I'm the bad person. Like, it's always like that. So it just became more and more instances. And my house, my grandparents' house, I should say, that my grandma said would always be my house, it filled up with maggots because my dad was just leaving crap everywhere and stuff, and I'd like go to friends and places and they wouldn't even clean up. So there's like the kitchen sink is starting to like one side doesn't drain, so it's like getting dirtier and dirtier, and it's starting to infest with maggots, and I'm just like, it's hard to even be in the kitchen, so I'm just like trying to clean this stuff, and I can't get it clean because of the drain and different things, and it was just really weird, like, time in my life, like, all this stuff was going on with Narcissists, and my ex had moved. Thankfully, I wasn't dealing with him too. But, so the house just like filled up with flies. I'm not even joking, because all these maggots and stuff, they turned into flies. And literally, like, the house was like, I called it Amityville Horror House because it was like full of freaking flies everywhere. It was disgusting. They were all around the windows, just like all around the windows. And literally, narcissists have the spirit of the devil. Like, I'm sorry, but that was Beelzebub or whatever they say is the devil. You know, they even says in the Bible, they accuse Jesus of using the power of Beelzebub, meaning the devil, and Beelzebub means Lord of the Flies. And so I was seeing all this in real life, like this spiritual connection of like weird shit happening, and these flies were like everywhere, maggots and like disgustingness. It also talks a lot about, you know, death in the Bible and worms. The worm is never satisfied, or the worm won't die. It's like symbolizes death and decay and like just like darkness, disgustingness, like the evil realm. And so yeah, so that was all happening, and you know, just calling my dad Pharaoh the Tyrant, and I felt like, you know, I had the light of Jesus in me, and he was not like playing around with that. He saw that as some kind of threat. The spirit in him did. But God used all that to get me away from my family, and my dad ended up going to jail and got a restraining order, and you know, because he always kept to himself. He never really hit me or anything like that. It was always like emotional abuse and like stuff people couldn't track down, because, you know, a lot of these covert narcissists don't leave marks, because marks leave a trail, and then you could be found out, and narcissists never want to be found out. They never want people to know who they really are. So, yeah, so my dad was getting more aggressive, and, yeah, just, he ended up going to jail one time. Finally, I was like, thank you, God, because I'd been praying and praying, like, help me, God, just get me out of here. And that finally happened. My dad had a restraining order, and he had to move to my other grandma's. Yeah, to go stay with her. And so he took my disabled mom, of course, and they live with my grandma and my aunt. I think my aunt was there too. I don't know. Maybe it was just my grandma, but yeah, so my dad finally had to get away, and I was left in that house, and alone. And that was really hard too, because it finally settled, like, all this happened, and I was alone, and I was like, what just fucking happened? Like, so much craziness, and I just, like, I'm clean and sober now, but I just literally, like, would smoke weed all day and listen to music because I was in so much mental anguish. I didn't know how to heal. So that was my coping, which was not the right thing, but by the grace of God, He got me to where I needed to be and got me in a place for help and recovery, and, you know, all different. Part of that was being homeless. I'll maybe go into that in another video, but yeah. And so, yeah, just so much craziness, and, you know, my dad, even, he went to jail. He tried to come back to the house, and he was legally not allowed to be around me, and that's where I lived, so they were like, you can't go around there. And my dad got there and was just like pale as a ghost because he went to jail, you know, for the night, and he couldn't drink alcohol, which he's been drinking since, I don't know how many years, but a really long time. Like, most of his life, he'd been drinking all the time, and it just got more and more steady, you know, as he lost his job, he drank more and more. And so my dad came back pale as a ghost, and he was like, what happened? What's going on here? And whatever. And my, like, daughter, she was now like 10 or so at the time. I didn't find this out till later, but my daughter went for a little joyride in his car, when, I have some bad things about me too. I was kind of out of it during that time because I was in so much, like, pain. I was in a marijuana smoke cloud, so I don't know. My daughter ended up telling me this one time she just took my dad's car. I don't know how, also by the grace of God, she didn't crash or whatever. But, so I was like, what? You did? She's like, yeah, because it was years later. She told me, she's like, that one time. But anyway, so my dad, his car was missing, and of course he thought I took it. I was like, I have my own car. At that time, I had my car. And, yeah, I, did not know anything about his car, so he called the police to have them come file a report. They came to the house, and they found out that he was at the house where he had a restraining order. so they said, you're going back to jail. My dad's like, what? Like, oh my gosh. So I'm just like, I feel sorry for him because he's white as a ghost. I've never seen my dad look like that. And, I love my dad. These narcissistic people, you love them at some time because you don't realize who they are. And, I still love my family, even though, I pray for them, pray for their heart and soul. But, so so I begged the officer, I'm like, please don't take my dad. Like, he's leaving. He had to grab something, and he wasn't going to be here. The officer's like, well, legally I have to, like, detain him because he's violating a restraining order. It's against the law. And I'm just, like, begging him, like, crying, like, please, my dad can't handle it. Like, he just went through detox, and he's white as a ghost. Like, I don't think he's gonna make it. I've never seen him look this bad. And I'm like, I'm scared for my dad, He doesn't look good. He's like barely walk. He got home and like sat and was like just white and couldn't move or talk. So I'm just like, what happened? And so the cop's like, alright. He's like, I'm just gonna walk away. So the cop leaves, and like it's like a miracle. Like he listened, and he's like felt some empathy, which God forbid a narcissist has any, like my dad, and you'll see why in a second. He doesn't. But the cop leaves, and I just got my dad out of going to jail again. And I'm like, you okay and whatever. My dad's like, calling me names, and he's like, you're gonna get what you deserve, not, or something, just like going off on me, and like so angry, and like literally I just helped him, and he's talking shit already, like a second after the cop leaves. So they literally don't give a shit. They have no compassion or feelings or anything. I'm sure he was bummed about his car, but I didn't do that. And so, that's just kind of my story about living with a narcissistic father and family. And I'll go more into my grandpa sometime when he kicked me out, and my daughter. And this was when she was about, this was a few years later. My daughter was like, I don't know, I don't have a sense of time, because when really traumatic stuff is happening, you don't remember the timeline. I get like this, and so when like people are questioning me about all this stuff, like not many people know, but like certain like workers and things of like that I'm like trying to explain how this happened, they're like, okay, this is way off in time, like you said this and then this. It's like, I don't freaking know, it's all blurred together. But yeah, my grandpa kicked me and my daughter out. My daughter was 15 and pregnant. She'd just gotten pregnant. So my grandpa decided he was going to sell the house and go live with his new girlfriend. And I'd lived there my whole life, just about. And all my family lived there. And so one by one they dwindled down, and my dad had the restraining order. He moved. My brother moved, and my brother actually went to go live with my cousins for a while because he didn't want to be around anyone. My dad like stole his money and stuff, which my brother was like, it's okay, like don't say anything. I'm just like, no, it's not okay. But yeah, like I said, my brother's very passive aggressive, or like passive aggressive too, in a way, because when you bottle stuff in, you get passive aggressive. But very passive. He's pretty peaceful most of the time, which is why he hated me and my dad getting roused up and like arguing, because I'm gonna defend myself. So yeah, my brother would get in the middle of that and be like, "You guys stop arguing." But so yeah, they all eventually everyone moved. My grandpa moved. I was the only one there. My daughter. My daughter was gone most of the time with this friend and then this boyfriend and stuff she met, and then she got pregnant at 15. But a lot of stuff was going on in both our lives. I could barely get out of bed for a while because of the trauma of my family betraying me, stabbing me in the back. It progressively, like, there were so many incidents and just leading up to it, and even with my grandpa too, like, I don't know, just all kinds of the different abuse and sexual abuse and physical and not so much physical, but mainly mental and emotional, sexual, hidden abuse, which just crept in slowly and disgustingly, and just set off a bomb in my life in my 30s. Um, you know, Leading up to that, probably around like 25 to 30, that's around when I started becoming a believer in Jesus, was when I was about 25 or so. I think around there, 24 maybe. So yeah, so many years into my walk, just things progressively got worse, and worse, and I realize now, looking back, it was all God separating me from evil and darkness and things that I had to put a stand against, and taught me a lot of spiritual warfare, how to pray my heart out, how to have discernment and wisdom. A lot of that's just gifts from God He gave me from prayer. All of it's God, really. I just have to say, all of it's God. That even finding out about the narcissism and toxicity, because I had no idea the depth, I never would have known if I didn't have that light that exposed the darkness. It says something in the book of John about how He came into the world, Jesus. He's the light of the world, The light of the world stepped in, and the world loved Him not because the light exposes the darkness. That's why Jesus also said He's the truth. So any lie is going to be exposed. And people that have a habitual life of lying or deceiving or hiding, which is a big thing in my narcissistic families. Foundations built on lies. It's a house of cards, And all it takes is someone to know the truth to topple that tower down. And that makes the people who built that tower very upset, because they're just going to keep on building that tower really high until you came and ruined it all. So, yeah. Got home from work, kind of worn out, trying to think if there's anything else left in this story, but I think I got most of it out. I was praying about what to talk about and, what vocab or whatever, reading things, and the Holy Spirit's just like, just tell a story. You're good at telling stories. And I'm just like, still struggle with a lot of self-doubt and things the narcissists have put my whole life on me, that I'm not anything good, no one wants to hear me, no one wants to see me, no one cares anything I have to say, I'm not smart was a big one. Yeah, so that's what the Lord wanted me to talk about, and just that spirit of pride in the narcissist it is from the darkness, and if you come into the light, you will battle with that darkness, because it doesn't like you. And I knew a lot of that coming out of the occult, because it started by exposing the devil and what the devil does, because I used to work with the devil. I prayed to Lucifer. I did witchcraft and got very deep into Luciferianism and secret doctrines and secret knowledge, and studied everything I could get my hands on, because I wanted to have all that knowledge, and I really deep down wanted to know the truth. So I just sucked up all that knowledge I could, and then when I encountered Christ, which I talk about in my testimony of my Christ testimony, you should go watch that too. But I just started exposing the devil, and then from there, I think it was disturbing those spirits in my family. They saw this. I was exposing this stuff, or like talking about it. I put it all over my Facebook. I talked about it on social media. My dad would say, like, it's really embarrassing, this stuff you talk about, an embarrassment. Like, nobody likes you. Nobody likes that. You don't have any friends because of that. And I didn't care. I was doing it to tell my truth and what I knew and what I'd seen, because it impacted me so deeply when the Lord found me, when Jesus Christ rescued me from evil, from the darkness. It impacted me so deeply, like I could not talk about it, and I did not care what my family had to say, that it was embarrassing or weird, or that most people don't like that, and we don't talk about religion or politics or this or that. I didn't care. This was affected me deep on a spiritual level, and it's my truth, and I'm talking about it. And so I guess that's what gave me the bravery, talking about that stuff, and then it being my own family that was hiding in darkness in this spirit. And so I got bold enough to go up against that. And I did not like that. So, but the best way is to just, you gotta confront it, but never fight or whatever. that was my issue, is I wanted to fight it, and it's only God can fight it. You just have to walk away. But the Lord separated me, I did have a lot of anger and just like shock and denial, because I grew up with this family my whole life, and I grew up in a tight-knit family where my grandparents, my parents, and my brother and everyone all lived together. And I was always around family all the time. And right now, currently, I don't really have anyone I consider family except my daughter. And my daughter, my grandchild. Those are my only real family that I do everything to guide them and be a good example, so that they understand these kind of things, that there's a spiritual battle, and just remind them who they are, their real identity. But wow, it's a long video. I didn't plan on talking this long, but if you're still here, I'm really shocked. Like I said, I have a hard time believing anything I say is even like remotely important, or so thanks so much for listening. Go into other things another time, and as always, if you have questions, comments, feel free to leave them below. I'm an open book. I love to talk, I love to teach, I love people, and I love helping people and learning from people. So if you have input too, similar experiences, I'd love to hear that. Maybe this brought something up in your mind, something you related to. I would love to hear it. Have a wonderful night, day, whatever time it is. And God bless.